I just finished watching both seasons of The Worst Ex Ever on Netflix. I'm trying to become the world's most prolific reviewer ever, so watch this review, and if you liked it, please subscribe to the channel. After watching it really helps. If you haven't seen it, it's a true crime documentary series about relationships that go horribly, horribly wrong, usually involving abusive or violent exes, and in some cases, murder. And after watching the whole thing, I have to say, it's pretty interesting, but it's also a little inconsistent. One of the things I noticed is that there isn't really a common pattern connecting all of the stories. I assume that's partially intentional. They probably wanted to give us a variety of different cases, but honestly, still most of the stories feel fairly similar. There are, however, a couple of cases that really stand out. The first one is the woman who couldn't stop killing. One of the most unusual stories involves a woman who murdered her girlfriend, then murdered her wife, and was apparently on her way to murdering her current girlfriend as well. That's definitely one of the more bizarre cases in the series. It's the kind of story where you just start wondering how uh, someone can repeatedly get into relationships, become increasingly violent, and somehow keep going. It's also one of those cases where the more you learn, the stranger it gets. All right, the next case is the restaurant owner and the fake robberies. The other case that really stood out to me involved a woman who had saved up enough money to open her own restaurant. She finally opened the restaurant, met a guy, and they started dating. He told her he was a police officer, although it turned out that he was more of an informant. Eventually, she found out that he was still married. His wife contacted her and explained the situation, so she broke up with him. He begged her to take him back. She said no. And that's when things became much more serious. He sexually assaulted her, and of course, she went to the police to report this, but instead of simply accepting that he was in trouble, this guy came up with a surprisingly complicated and almost successful plan. And this is one of the few times in the series where I thought, okay, this guy actually has a plan. He supposedly recruited several people and offered them money to report fake crimes to the police. The idea was that these people would all claim that this woman had been robbing them. And the clever part was that the reports came in on the same night, and the witnesses gave similar descriptions of the same woman. They even gave different parts of what they claimed was her license plate, and it was like the different numbers added up. So, from the police's perspective, why would three supposedly unrelated people all make up the same story? It actually created a pretty convincing case against her. The woman had an alibi. She was in another state at a casino, but investigators thought that could have been something she had deliberately arranged to make herself look innocent, and the video recording was quite grainy. And amazingly, the guy's plan almost worked, but then we get to the part where the criminal mastermind apparently forgot one very important detail. He didn't pay the people he hired. So, if you're going to organize an elaborate conspiracy involving multiple people, pay the people. That's just basic criminal management. Eventually, the scheme fell apart. And that case really illustrates one of the things I liked about the series. You get to see both good police work and absolutely terrible police work. The next up is the Deadpool Killer. Probably the most memorable case for me was the guy who became known as the Deadpool Killer. His real name was Wade Wilson, which is also the name of Deadpool, the fictional character Deadpool. And apparently he was handsome when he was younger, much like the actor who plays Deadpool, which is part of how he got that nickname. He had been in and out of prison for years and apparently had a very charming personality. He could talk to people and get them to trust him. He met a woman through online dating. They started a relationship, and eventually he became abusive. When she tried to leave him, he kidnapped her. He drove her around Florida for an entire night, beating her before eventually leaving her on the side of the road. She went to the police and told them what had happened. And this is an example of bad police work. Really bad police work. There was footage of her speaking to an officer, and the officer basically seemed to think this guy wouldn't do something like that. And he straight up said that to the guy who was a suspect. And the problem was he absolutely would. As the series continues, we discover that he had a history of abusive relationships with both women and men. And apparently, many of these relationships became extremely violent. He tried to murder every person he was with. Then things escalated dramatically, although they were pretty dramatic before. He was staying with another woman he had previously been in a relationship with, and they went to a bar. He was apparently extremely social and was talking to everyone. At some point, he told his girlfriend that, or ex-girlfriend, I guess, that he'd met somebody and wanted to go somewhere to do drugs. She didn't want to go with him, so she went home. He did meet someone at the bar, though. He went back to this woman's house, and when her roommate left, he murdered her. That's one of the strangest things about this case. Uh, you can understand or at least see the progression when an abusive relationship becomes violent. But here the situation suddenly escalates into the murder of someone who seemingly had very little connection to him. Like it wasn't his girlfriend or anything, it was just somebody he just met. After killing her, he stole her car. Then he went looking for the woman who had left him at the bar earlier. She refused to get into the car with him because obviously she wanted to know whose car is this because she had been driving them around the day before. He attacked her and then drove away. She called the police, obviously. The police eventually found him in the stolen car. And he's sitting there without a shirt, and the police are basically saying, we want to talk to you because you assaulted this woman. And his response is essentially, nope. And he drives away. And they don't chase him because they don't want a big confrontation in the street. But then they realize he's a suspect in a murder, not just an assault. So eventually a manhunt begins. The police find him and they eventually discover the body of the woman he had murdered. And this is the crazy part. This guy became something of an internet celebrity, which is honestly one of the more disturbing aspects of the whole story. He seemed to enjoy the attention. He had tattoos all over his face, including Nazi imagery, and he seemed to think of himself as some kind of celebrity or infamous character, but now he's on death row. So, what did I think overall of Worst X Ever? I think it's worth watching if you enjoy true crime. It's not necessarily a series I would say you absolutely have to sit down and watch from beginning to end. but it's very easy to have on in the background while you're doing something else. And there are enough interesting cases to keep you watching. What I found most interesting isn't necessarily the murders themselves, it's the way these relationships develop. You see people who seem perfectly normal at the beginning of a relationship, and then slowly you discover the controlling behavior, the manipulation, the violence, and eventually the really extreme stuff. And there are also some interesting lessons about police work, both when investigators get things right and when they get things spectacularly wrong. There are also a few cases where you look at the criminal's plan and think, okay, that's actually, well, maybe one case, and you think, okay, that's actually pretty clever. And then 5 minutes later, they do something incredibly stupid and ruin it, which unfortunately, or rather fortunately, seems to be a recurring theme in true crime. So if you like true crime documentaries, I'd give Worst Ex Ever a watch. I think it's about a 7 out of 10. It's interesting, it's disturbing, and there are some genuinely disturbing, bizarre and disturbing stories in it. And perhaps more importantly, it teaches us one very important lesson. If you're going to create an elaborate criminal conspiracy, pay the people you hired. Apparently, that's where this guy went wrong. Anyway, that's my review of Worst Ex Ever. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And as I said, you enjoy what I do, I'm trying to become the most prolific reviewer of all time. Please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Bye bye.